Hey there, my English 102 students. Sorry it's been a bit since I had some recap videos, but here is the recap for today. So, as we've talked about, we're working on Project 2 now, which is a much longer research project. It has 3,500 words and 15 sources. And because of how much longer it is, this project will require a lot more pre-planning than any of the articles for Project 1. So our focus for this week is on finding sources and beginning to do something I call quote integrations. And so essentially what we're doing is some in-depth note-taking to help you prepare for a successful research paper. Now, with that, a couple caveats I want to cover first. The first thing is remember that there is no such thing as a perfect research paper. Similarly, there's no such thing as a perfect writing process. No one has perfect study skills. And so the strategies that we're going over for Project 2, these are designed to help you see successful study strategies to help with the research, but don't beat yourself up if you're not following some exact method or something like that. As I hope you'll see in this discussion, there are a couple different variations for what you can do. The next thing I want to really emphasize here is, we're looking for good sources, we're looking for good perspectives, and one small thing that normally doesn't come up in English 102, but I do want to put this reminder out there, is you don't want to use Wikipedia as one of your sources. As I mentioned before, Wikipedia is great for helping you find sources, and I do encourage that. But it shouldn't become one of the sources you use for your paper, because Wikipedia simply doesn't go into enough detail. It doesn't explain enough about any given topic, and your job as a researcher is to delve in and get that specific detail. You're supposed to go deeper than Wikipedia can. Same goes with other encyclopedias. Wikipedia, Encyclopedia Britannica, the dictionary. None of those are great research sources. They simply don't provide the level of detail that I am looking for as an instructor. Okay. So from there, let's talk about what are the things you're doing this week. So the first, we have a smaller assignment, which is emailing your librarians, and that link is on there. This is a relatively short assignment spread out over 3 weeks. So this week you're emailing your librarian with just a research question about your topic. By next week, you should receive a reply, and then the following week, you'll do a quick little reflection about how you're using those sources. Now, with this week, our focus is starting out with primary and secondary sources, and so it's unlikely that you will need that support from the librarian for this week's assignments. And so what you're going to be doing is first deciding what perspectives you want to look for with your topic. And so, for example, we talked a little bit about forest fires. And as an example, if you're going to write about those, then, one perspective might be the firefighter who goes in and fights those fires. Another perspective might be from a family who was displaced and had to leave their homes because of a forest fire. A third perspective, might be looking at, a relatively recent wildfire in California that was caused by, power line failure. The power line fell down, caused some sparks, set off a blaze. And so a spokesperson for the power company would be yet another perspective. An electrical engineer talking about the source of that problem would be another perspective. And so you want to think about what are the different angles available for your topic. And so once you have those different sources, those perspectives, what we want to do next is gather quotes. And for this week's assignment, you're looking for 7 sources, and from those 7 sources, you'll be finding 15 quotes. and then integrating some of those sources into your notes. And by integrating, what I mean is you're going to be adding some sentences to integrate your thoughts and your perspectives with that quote. And if you can start connecting some of those quotes together from different sources, that's even better. But don't worry about that too much at this stage. So the example we talked about in class was shipbuilding, and then we zeroed in on the Ford class aircraft carriers. And so I found a quote from CNET that talked about some of the advances that the Ford class carrier brings. And so what I wrote in there is, as I mentioned in class, first, I know the Ford class carriers are very expensive. I don't happen to know offhand how expensive they are. And so, the first thing I put in with my integration is a little placeholder. It just says find quote about price, because it's, if I'm talking about shipbuilding, it'd be good to know how expensive it is to build that ship. All right. And then I put in the quote itself, which talked about, it has an advanced aircraft launch system, it has advanced propulsion, advanced power systems, all those kinds of things. And what I put in there, is, we've got this, here's this price tag. And then I wrote, although they are very expensive, the Ford class carrier does offer a step up in technological capability for, as viewed by the Navy. And then I gave the quote itself. And then after that quote, I wrote, however, some would feel that this money could be better spent elsewhere, say in funding social programs. And something important to note here is, the integration part is where I'm talking about, this is, although it's expensive, this is what we're getting. And I also put in that, this is the Navy's viewpoint. Now, personally, I share the view that, it's good we have technological development for our military, for national defense. But on the other hand, I need to acknowledge that these expenses do take away from other priorities that we could be funding. We could be funding more education, we could be funding more healthcare. And so this is where the integrations come into play, where you talk about, some of the perspectives you found and you share your own perspective. Now, this stage of the assignment, you are not writing your whole paper. You're just taking a couple quotes, putting in your thoughts about those quotes, and then moving on. And so my hope is that you'll find around 15 total quotes, and that you'll choose, somewhere between 3 and 5 of those quotes to kind of write your perspectives on, kind of write a paragraph around each of those quotes. Now, the word count for this assignment is 500 words. So that 500 words is the integrations. So those paragraphs you have written around those quotes, that material you've written along with the quotes that are inside that material, that stuff should be 500 words. Okay, so if you have 3 great quotes that are about 100 words, and then you have about 400 words talking about those 3 quotes, then that's going to be your 500 words right there. The other quotes you find that you don't integrate, please don't count those in your word count. Right? You can easily find 500 words of quotes without writing a single thing, and that is not what I want. I want you guys beginning to interact with your material. Okay. Now, a couple other quick things. Some folks prefer to do handwritten notes. That is perfectly okay. If you prefer handwriting, you can simply write out your quotes and your integrations on paper, and you can simply upload photos of that to Canvas. I'm not going to make you retype your notes or anything stupid like that. The other thing too is that there is no requirement that I'm able to actually read your notes. These notes are for you. Right? As long as I can tell that you are finding sources and finding quotes, you're good to go. Now, with the sources and quotes, make sure that when you copy over a quote to your notes, or if you handwrite it, make sure you acknowledge what source that quote is coming from. You don't want a situation where you have an uncited quote that gets copied over into your paper later and then becomes plagiarism. So make sure you have citations in there. The other thing to bear in mind too is that not every quote will make it into your paper. Right? There's a very good chance you'll have a couple dead ends in your research where you find something interesting, but then there's no room for it later in your paper. All of the material you find counts towards your grade. Okay? So if you find material that doesn't make it in your paper, still submit it because you still get those points. They still help your grade. And I want to make sure you get the credit for all the work you put in. You know, one of the things with research papers that confused me for many years was I was under this impression that you go out, you find your information, and you write about it. The reality is that you go out, you find a bunch of information, you start sorting through it, sifting through it, figuring out what is the important stuff and what is the stuff that's not as important or maybe not quite relevant to what your topic is. And then bear in mind your topic may change over the course of your writing. Your focus may change. And for English 102, even if your topic changes, even if your focus changes, even if you find material that you later find is useless, the fact that you went out and found that information and took notes on it and thought about it, that still contributes to your grade. That still shows me that you're doing the research to find enough material that you have something good to work with. So with that, as always, please let me know in case you have any questions or any thoughts or comments. And with that, have a great rest of the day.